Welcome to the fifth of 5 videos from the Roman Army 2021 UofW lecture on sources. And in this final video, I want to say a little bit about Vindolanda, which is a super important site for many of the social aspects of the Roman military, at least in the first few centuries CE. And this is the last of these little sort of case study snapshot ones. Okay, get rid of my face. Right. So Vindolanda is another wonderful place which I have been to. Totally worth going when we're pandemic free. Go to Hadrian's Wall in Vindolanda and check out the amazing finds there. So Vindolanda is in the north of Britain, north of England, so just sort of south of the modern border with Scotland, more or less. Just south of Hadrian's Wall. Here is a shot of it. It is or has been extremely well excavated for a number of years now, thanks in part to the Beerley family. And the range of finds they have uncovered here are remarkable. So on the one hand, there are the physical remains, much as I said we had for Dura Europos in the previous video. So there are the structures of the fort itself, which went through a number of variations from its beginnings in the late or second half of the first century CE through to its end. And there are much more qualified people than me: Beth Green, Rob Collins, Andy Beerley, etc. Who, for its end in the 5th century CE, it went through a number of different changes. Not only was there a fort here as well, but there also was, let's call it civilian settlement in and around the site. Some of it has been called, or you might call more traditional because of its structure and the people who live there. That tells us a lot about who lived at these sorts of sites, and reveals, as archaeologists have found in various places all over the Roman world, that it wasn't just soldiers. There were families, civilians from varied backgrounds doing lots of things in the fort and around the fort. Now, not just the physical remains have been found here, the structures, the buildings, and so on. We've also found some remarkable organic materials. Now, usually Egypt is a place where things are well preserved because of the dry anaerobic conditions, the desert, which is why the papyri are preserved so well, and some textiles and things, but the clay and the waterlogged stuff prevents air from getting in. A lot of stuff has been preserved here because, again, the anaerobic conditions, surprisingly enough, above ground, very wet and damp, but below ground, the conditions are great. And they found piles and piles of shoes and some socks, and it's interesting for so many reasons. And as I go read the stuff, is by the aforementioned Beth Green, Canada Research Chair at Western, but yes, they, amongst many other things, the shoes come in so many different shapes and sizes, and some of it is definitively, I think we say now, children's shoes, and some of it is male shoes, and some of it is probably female shoes, more or less. And if nothing else, it indicates that a wide variety of people of a wide variety of shapes and sizes were living and playing and whatever else, working here. Okay, so again, varied inhabitants. They found some other things too, like toilet seat lids, and you can follow them on various social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc., to see what they want, or go to the Vindolanda Trust website and contribute. But they've also found quite some of the most remarkable or other remarkable things from Vindolanda, and kind of a nod to the papyri from Egypt are these wooden tablets. So it's not like a big tablet like an iPad or whatever, but these are kind of like, instead of using papyrus to make paper, it's using bits of wood to make something like paper. And they found, I don't know, hundreds of these, thousands of these, maybe more like hundreds, many of which have been published, but there's still many that haven't. In some ways, it's the same kind of material that's found in Egypt because it's being used in the same way. It's all specifically from this military context, and a lot of it dates to a relatively narrow period of time from the late 1st century CE possibly into the early 2nd century CE. and it's the same variety. I said there were receipts for things purchased, so it illuminates a great deal about some of the food and drink that was consumed at Vindolanda. It names a lot of individuals, so we can learn something about the social relationships that takes place. One of the most famous documents for the Roman world is one of the ones I've asked you to read in different contexts. It's the Vindolanda birthday tablet. Okay, Claudia Severa writes to her friend, inviting her to a birthday party and asks about the family and how they're doing. So we have an officer's wife living at the fort, presumably speaking to another officer's wife. And it just tells us so much about, so many things. Power structures, literacy, who is doing what, and all sorts of other things besides. So there are lots of these tablets. Some of them used to be able to access very well from this website. It's a little bit sketchy now, but there are some other written materials found here too. So another thing that people used to write on besides these wooden tablets at Vindolanda were little like wax tablets. In theory, this was like erasable, so you could write something and then sort of smooth it out and do it again. But if you press down hard enough, some of the original material would show up underneath. So these are also in the process of being analyzed, and it should tell us a lot more about some of the interactions here. So stuff, Vindolanda, I mean, there could have been raids and a lot of low-intensity, small-scale conflict taking place in and around Vindolanda, but unlike Dura Europos, it wasn't the site that was besieged, as far as we know. And so it illuminates much more of the social side of the military, the military's role in the local community, and the variety of things the soldiers might do than day to day. So Vindolanda is another place which provides lots of evidence of a varied quality about the Roman military. And this ends my set of 5 video overviews of some of the sources. Again, a very small snippet of the many sources that we have for the Roman military. Bye for now.